Hey everyone, we're back. I think I'm going to go ahead and do these in two separate short videos. The first one that we're going to look at is we're going to look at the case for exporting when we're considering our supply and demand economy within our domestic scenarios. So if you don't know what I'm referring to, I might suggest going back and watching the last video that looks at supply and demand within a closed economy, and then the concept of a world price. So when do we export something? Kind of tying in all our trade stuff together, you export something when you have a comparative advantage in producing that item. And what does it mean to have a comparative advantage in something? It means that you can produce that item at a lower opportunity cost or a lower cost than competitors in the rest of the world. So starting out with our supply and demand diagram, remember, we've got price on that vertical axis and quantity on the horizontal. We've got our downward sloping demand line, which is now our domestic demand. Our upward sloping supply line, again, domestic. If this were a closed economy, we would be at this equilibrium, so that's P star if it's closed, and this is the quantity we would produce if it were a closed economy. But again, we're going to open ourselves up to trade, and we do this when we can do something for a lower price. So what can we do? We can produce this item for P closed, right? Or some price that's similar. When we sell it, we're not going to sell it for what it costs us to produce it. We're going to sell it and try to earn a little bit of a profit in there. So we're likely going to set or see a world price that is above our own closed economy price. So this white line, which looks a little slanted and it shouldn't be, that should be a horizontal line, but that is my world price. And again, if I were a better drawer, that would be perfectly horizontal. I don't know if I should try to do it again or not. So here's the deal, right? When you have this world price above equilibrium, what's going to happen? Because the price is higher, domestic consumers are not going to want to buy as much. I think that, quantity demanded domestic. A classic example of this, a product that we tend to export, is airplanes, right? Maybe Delta and Southwest and all of these airlines would buy planes from Boeing at P closed if we had a closed economy. And they would, replace their planes every few years. But because Boeing is also making planes for companies and airlines in other countries, right, it's going to push up the price of those planes. And so Delta, Southwest, and our local airlines are not going to be able to replace their planes as often. They're going to buy fewer planes and have to pay a higher price. At the same time, our companies like Boeing are ecstatic that they can sell their planes for more money to people in other countries. In fact, they're going to rev up their production. So this intersection of the world price and our supply line right there, that's going to give us the quantity that we're going to produce when we're exporting. So we're producing a lot. Local buyers are only buying a few. What's that difference? That gap is the amount that we're exporting. So you could literally subtract the quantity that we're buying domestically from the quantity that we're producing domestically, and that'll tell you how many we're selling abroad. So now, who wins and who loses in this scenario? So I'm going to switch to blue here for my buyers. All right, so buyers. What do we know? In the case of exporting, buyers are going to be paying a higher price and getting less for it. Oops, misspelled buying there. Buying fewer. It's spelled right now, just an extra dot. So buyers are paying more. They're getting fewer of this item. Buyers are worse off than they were at the original P closed and Q closed. Okay, so relative to the old closed economy equilibrium, buyers are worse off. How much worse off are they? We could actually, my classes don't do the math here, but there's no reason you couldn't do math if you had the numbers. Buyers are actually going to be worse off by an amount equal to this blue trapezoid. So this blue trapezoid shows us that some buyers are paying a higher price and other buyers are not even getting the item at all. That's like a big X here. So all of those folks are losing, right? Some folks lose because they don't get the new plane, and other folks lose because they're having to pay more for the plane. So buyers are made worse off. What about our sellers, though? Like Boeing, as I mentioned before, they're ecstatic. Our sellers, relative to the closed economy equilibrium, are actually selling more. So I'm putting here producing more, but they are selling more and doing so at a higher price. They're happy, and the truth is they're creating more jobs because we're producing more things. So how much happier are they relative to equilibrium? Well, our producers are going to gain, in green here, this green trapezoid. So this green trapezoid shows that for all quantities they were producing before, Q closed, they're selling at a higher price. And so all of this first green part, selling at a higher price, and they're now selling more units than they were before. That second part of the green trapezoid. What do you notice? If you compare the size of the blue to the size of the green, hopefully you see that they overlap, right? But all of the blue can fit inside of the green, and there's extra green. The green is undoubtedly bigger than the blue. So what do we see here? We see the gains to sellers outweigh the losses to the buyers when we export. Trade makes us as a society better off. It's because businesses are winning when they export that nobody is lobbying Congress asking them to stop exports, right? Everybody presumably loves exports. Who doesn't love exports? Maybe the buyers. But again, we tend not to get up in arms because we understand, all the jobs that are created, all the benefits associated with exporting. So exporting is still a very popular side of trade. Next video, we'll talk about the more contentious one, right? The one that we hear about in the news, and that is imports. But until then, enjoy, and as always, let me know if you have any questions.